Recording in progress. Okay. Hola, amigos. It's good to see everybody. Good to talk to everybody, really. Omar. Okay. What are we doing over here? Parshas Vayechi. We have the Torah roundup. What's going on this week? As you know, Torah roundup is really, I've changed it not just from the Parsha, but like what's going on during the week. So number one, numero uno, tomorrow is a fast day. We fast. It's actually considered one of the most stringent fast days. If it were to land on Shabbos, we would actually push off Shabbos. But the way the calendar is set up, it will never land on Shabbos. Interestingly enough, it will never land on Shabbos. It maybe perhaps until when Mashiach comes and we'll reestablish the system of witnesses, then I think perhaps there is a possibility that it could happen, but it doesn't. But it's as stringent as that. And therefore, even if it lands on a Friday, which sometimes it does, we fast on a Friday. There's a law, you're not allowed to fast on a Friday. You can't fast going into Shabbos. Now, you could just have a drink. You don't have to actually eat food. Although there is a mitzvah to eat food, Erev Shabbos, on the eve of Shabbos. Eat a little bit of Shabbos food. I never do it. I don't mean to admit it, but I just never do it. I'm not interested in doing it. And I want to enjoy the food on Shabbos, so I don't taste any of it. But there are probably majority of Jews who observe Shabbos will adhere to that mitzvah. In Chabad, there's a saying, we're not so careful with the mitzvahs that have to do with eating food. Meaning we have, obviously, matzah on Pesach, and, we'll eat when we need to eat, whatever. But we don't, there's a mitzvah to eat this specific food on this Shabbos, this type of meat. Like we're not into that. I don't know why. We just don't do it. Anyway, so the fast of Tevis is tomorrow. What is the fast of Tevis? In short, the 10th of Tevis, two things happen, two major things, or three major things really happen on that day. Number one, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, Bavel, surrounded Jerusalem. He laid siege, wouldn't let us go in or out, hoping to starve us to death. He started that. 30 months later, the Beis HaMikdash, the first temple, was destroyed, and really Jerusalem was never restored to its full beauty. Even though the second temple was built, it never. The ark, if you saw one of my quizzes, the ark was placed down below. King Solomon built two places for the ark to be with divine providence. The ark has two places it could be. The ark, yeah, you saw Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade. In the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that ark, they're looking for that ark. The ark of God. Inside that ark are the two tablets that God gave to Moses, the broken tablets, the non-broken tablets, the manna's in there. Aaron's staff is, I don't know if Aaron's staff's placed inside, but it hangs out, right? Maybe it's placed outside of it, right outside of it. And it has to be in its place. They aren't, for you to do your service in the Holy Temple, it has to be in its place. I think the only thing that doesn't have to be in its place, meaning the mitzvah that we can do, even if the ark is not in its place, is give the carbon Pesach, the Pesach sacrifice. And that's why, in order to give the Passover sacrifice, parenthetically over here, which fits into actually well to Rambam that we're going to talk about. But the Passover sacrifice, majority of Jews have to live in the land of Israel, meaning the land of Israel or Jerusalem has to be majority Jews. We have to have control of the place. And if everyone is either ritually pure or ritually impure, you can bring it. 1967, it was a problem. In 1967, when Israel took control of Jerusalem, and we had the Temple Mount, when Passover was coming, it was a big problem. Perhaps you had to be out, and I think we brought it up before. I didn't check it up. I think we had to leave Jerusalem. Like a lot of people had to leave Jerusalem because we had to have brought the Passover sacrifice, but we don't know how to do it, so we're not going to do it. Majority of people, everyone's impure. Right, everyone's impure. We don't have the golden cat. The red heifer, the red cow. Remember we spoke about that? We'll speak about it again in a few parshas from now. To sprinkle us, to make us pure. So everyone's impure, and because everyone's impure, you can bring it, and we have to bring it. So it was a big problem. I don't know how I got on that. But Babylonia, the king of Babylonia, Nebuchadnezzar, he had laid siege to Jerusalem. Jeremiah the prophet, who was probably he just faced the most opposition out of any prophet in our history. His job, he had a very tough job. He had to convince the Jewish people, convince us to act the right way and do what we're supposed to do. And nobody listened, nobody cared. In fact, they even jailed him. And he kept saying, come on, let's get it together. God is going to destroy Jerusalem. He's going to destroy the temple. Well, I know why. The king Yoshia put the ark underneath about a couple hundred years before the destruction of the temple. He knew that it was going to get destroyed, so he put it underneath in the vault in the maze, deep down within Jerusalem. There's another place where the ark could be, and in the second temple, the ark never returned. It always remained in its place and down below, so they never saw it. Nobody ever saw it. They couldn't go to walk into the Holy of Holies, and it wasn't there. What was there was the Mizbeach, the altar for the incense. But the ark is still there. It's still there to today. We don't know where. Archaeologists have even sent letters to the Rebbe saying we probably know where it is. It's a famous letter. We can look for it. And the Rebbe said, what are you going to do with it? If you find it, just leave it. And they left it. Oh, they didn't bother to keep going. I'm not saying they're not looking for it now, but at that time, everyone just was like, okay, yeah, you're right. We'll just leave it. It's still there to today, and therefore there's a certain level of holiness that still remains in the Temple Mount, Temple area. We're not really supposed to go to the top, walk around, do whatever we want to do. Anyway, Nebuchadnezzar surrounded the temple, laid siege, and 30 months later, during that period of time, Yirmiyahu was trying to convince us to do the right thing. We put him in jail. God was like, all right, that's the end of that. 30 months later was the 9th of Av, and it was destroyed. So that the 10th of Tevis is like the beginning of the end, so to speak. Another thing that happened, the Torah was translated into Greek on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. And the Torah says, the Talmud says that it was 3 days of darkness. Not sure if it was real physical darkness. Perhaps it was, but certainly a spiritual darkness. And the question is, what's so bad about translating the Torah into Greek? It was translated into 72 rabbis. It was an Egyptian king who was a king of Greece at the time. He was born in Egypt, and he asked. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. They asked the sages to translate the Torah into Greek, and seemingly a good thing. Thank God for all the translations into all the different languages. We can understand Torah. Anybody, it's the accessibility of Torah nowadays is unprecedented, obviously. So seemingly it's a good thing. But why it was dark is because it was done for the wrong reasons. They translated the Torah because the Greeks said it's not as we want it to be an intellectual pursuit. They appreciated the Jewish people's ability to study. And they appreciated their Torah, and they thought that there's nothing godly about it, as we spoke about during Hanukkah. There's nothing godly about it, but it's something to be studied nevertheless. And we translated it for the wrong reasons. In other words, and so therefore there was darkness, which fits. And another thing that happened was Ezra the Scribe died 1,000 years later after the giving of the Torah. Ezra was famous for for a few things. One of them, rallying the troops to go back, the Jews to go back to the land of Israel from Babylonia. Most of the Jews remained in Babylonia. The Jewish people have been living in Iran from the destruction of the first temple until the 1980s, when the Shah was taken over. Now, it was a majority, at a certain point, obviously, it was the majority of the Jewish people lived in Bavel, Iran, Iraq, that area. But we remained there. I mean, history has been there since 2,500 years ago, until the 1980s. It's an unbelievable concept. Esther and Mordechai are buried there. The story of Purim takes place in between the 70 years between the destruction of the first temple and the rebuilding of the second temple. The rebuilding of the second temple, led by Ezra. And he had very few people, and he couldn't really raise so much funds, but they went ahead and built it anyway. Mordechai didn't go back. Mordechai stayed Mordechai stayed in Bavel. They knew each other. Ezra was part of the court system as well, the Sanhedrin. Ezra established that Torah should be read every 3 days. That's why we have Torah readings on Mondays and Thursdays. And we have Torah on the afternoon of Shabbos. We read the Torah again, just of the upcoming Parsha, because a practical reason that people are not able to really join Mondays and Thursdays because they work, even back then, 2,500 years ago. So you can hear the Torah a little bit to some extent. He passed away, so that was obviously a big bummer. And that I believe those are the 3 things. So that's the 10th of Tevis tomorrow. It's a very stringent fast. It's the shortest fast if you live on the Western Hemisphere, like me. If you're in Australia, it's probably your longest fast. So sorry guys. Tanya this week, chapter 7, which talks about klipa, doing things for the wrong reasons, which fits very well with the 10th of Tevis. Doing things for the wrong reasons creates klipa. There's klipa. There's something called klipa in the world. Godliness, let me explain it like this. Godliness is transparency. That's what godliness is. Yeah, I look at your eyes. Why do I look at your eyes when I talk to you? I look at your eyes because your soul is transparent. That's the more godly part of you. It's a much truer part of you. Godliness, kedusha, holiness, is transparency. Klipa means a shell. Means it's covered over. The truth, the godliness inside of you is the godliness of the object, of the thought, of whatever it is covered over. The truth of the item is covered over. Now we have an ability to extract the truth. We call elevate, but it really just means make to show its true purpose. So that's why eating for the sake of serving God, prayer, have energy to pray and to help. That's the point of food. That's what food is for. Food is fuel. It's energy to get you to do the right thing. But if we just eat it for the sake of filling our own desires, it now moves into the world of sholosh klipas hatameis. This is a Kabbalistic idea. There are 3 levels of impurity which cannot be elevated. It's called asur. Asur. There's something called mutter and asur. Translated as permitted and not permitted. But literally means mutter means to be untied, released, and asur means to be tied down. Yeah, you can't do that. It's asur. You'll hear that in Israel. It's asur. Which means it's wrong. You can't do that. But it literally means to be tied down. What they're saying is you're not able to elevate it. If you do it like this, you're not able to elevate it. Certain items in the world can never be elevated. Certain food items, they're not meant to be elevated. They have their own purpose, but the purpose there is not for us to sift through and to consume and to try to elevate. They can't. They don't have the capability by design. So that's called sholosh klipas tameis. We talk about that. So when you, what happens is if you consume too many, says the Torah, if you consume too many, or Tanya, I should say, which is Torah, if you consume too many unholy items, anytime we consume something unholy, it leaves a mark on the soul, and that's what something called chibut hakever literally means a slingshot. A slingshot. The soul goes through chibut hakever after it leaves the body to refine the soul, to remove that blemish. You can saying words of Torah in this world by heart. I don't know what the connection is. I should really look it up. But saying words of Torah by heart limits the time in chibut hakever. I guess it rectifies the soul. It cleanses the soul while the soul is here. There's let's be very clear. There's no like dents or bruises in the soul. It really means the soul becomes insensitive, so it gets covered up. That's why a person will go off track. Yeah, someone who's like holy meaning they're observant and they do a lot of proper spiritual things. How do they move to be completely off track? They overconsume in pleasurable things. And what happens is that overconsumption creates klipa, which means it covers over, it desensitizes the soul, desensitizes you until eventually, a very holy person could eat kosher hamburgers, But if he's eating like 5 hamburgers a day just to fulfill his desire, he's going to probably go off track and not be interested in kosher and all that stuff anymore, keeping Shabbos, because he's desensitized himself. There's so much klipa that has happened. He's desensitized himself. And you can train yourself to be desensitized. You just be stuck in this cycle. Most of us, we get stuck. I think that's like a very good word. In yeshiva, at a mashpia, I would always talk about, I'm so stuck. I'm stuck. You just can't get out. Like, it's like this cycle. I can't get it out of the cycle. There are ways to get out of the cycle. That's what a fabrengen really, that's what really helps. But at a certain point, a person just, the soul is like, I've had enough to a certain point and rushes back out. That's chapter 7 of Tanya. And then the Rambam of this week talks about festival sacrifices, festivals. There are 3 festivals of the year. Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. We have to go up to, if you live within a certain range of the Holy Temple, you have to go up and bring something to see God. It's not only it's to see God and be seen. And seen by God. You have to see God and be seen by God. That's God wants you to come 3 times a year to see God and be seen by God. And says, don't come up rekam, don't come up without it, don't come up empty-handed. We bring certain fruits, the first fruits, and we have fruits that we give to the Kohen and to the Levi, to the Levites. And your firstborn animals have to be given to God. Now, how do you calculate all that? That's what the Rambam gets into. What's considered firstborn, yada, yada, which animals, which not animals. But you go and you bring them. The question is, what if you have non-kosher animals? In fact, the Torah talks about a donkey. You bring your donkey. What do you mean you bring a donkey? Donkey's not kosher. So you don't, says the Torah, you redeem it. The redemption of the firstborn. You go and you give money, the amount of money it would be to sell that donkey. That's what you bring to the temple. And they use that money for communal needs, for uses of the temple and for helping the community. A lot of laws in that. So even non-kosher animals are involved in such a situation. I think there's something else I wanted to tell you, but I don't remember. So let's just keep going. Maybe it'll come back to me. So the parsha is Parshas Vayechi, the life of Yaakov. And whenever, I'm sure you know by now, whenever it says the life of someone, chances are they're going to pass away or they already passed away, which is very interesting. It's Parshas Chazak. It's Parshas Chazak, and which means we're concluding the parsha, the whole entire Chumash Bereshis, and we're starting Shmos. This is it. Moses is going to be mentioned at the end of this parsha. We are really in Egypt right now. These are the last 17 years of Yaakov's life, and it says the Baal HaTurim says it says that the best years of Yaakov's life were the last 17 years of his life. The Baal HaTurim says 17 is the gematria, the numerical value of Tov, which means good. So how could it be that Yaakov's best years, the last 17 years of his life, living in Egypt, were his best years? Says the Torah, it's because he sent his son, who did he send? Levi? Or Yehuda? Down to the land of Israel to set up a yeshiva. He set up an environment of Torah. And because of that, you can be anywhere you want, as long as you have the right mindset and you understand the depth of, you have a mission, a sense of mission and growth and purity. You can be anywhere you want. You can be anywhere. Famous, my most favorite line, you'll probably hear me say it 20 times. I already did it in my Instagram today. Yaakov says to Yosef, Loi ra panecha, palalti es panecha. I never envisioned and never imagined that I would see your face. The Torah points out, palalti, palel is shares the same letters as tefillah, which means prayer. Prayer is envision, imagine. That's what prayer is. It's also connection, and it also means but you'll never see it means like requests. You'll see a mistranslation usually. Okay, obviously we do request stuff, but prayer is really about, it's not just about the time, those 3 times a day that we have like a set prayer, we have a sitter and all these different things. It's very important. And we'll talk more about prayer, hopefully Thursday. what the significance of prayer and why it's set up in a certain way. But prayer is really throughout the entire day, because prayer is trying to imagine how you want to be, how you want your life to be, your environment, your home, all these different things, and you're trying to articulate it, get it, feeling it, and then requesting, so to speak, of God to create that vision. But it's more about the vision. It's all about the imagination. You have to be clear on the vision. And prayer is to remind us of what's my purpose here, and where am I trying to go? And God, make everything set up so that I could do what I need to do. We don't ask money for the sake of money. We don't do that. We ask money because I need money in order to serve you properly. I need to take care of all these other things in order to be able to do what I need to do. Sorry, 1 second. That is what palalti, that's what prayer means. And we learned from this week's Parsha. Yaakov says to his son, Yaakov is going to give a bunch of blessings to his children. He's going to give blessings to each one of his children and 2 of his grandchildren. He was blind at the end of his life because he got old. He tells Yosef, he gives him a few blessings, and he says, I want you to do a chesed shel emes for me. If you ever see a funeral home, very often they'll be called chesed shel emes. A chesed shel emes means a true kindness. The Torah says, what is a true kindness? Burying somebody. Burying somebody is a true kindness, because it's in no way can they repay you. Yaakov was asking Yosef to please take my body. I don't want to be buried here in Egypt. Bring it back to Israel. I want you to do a chesed shel emes. Please bury me there, which the Torah will get into. 1 second. Bella, what was your stepsister's name? If you're still on, Bella. Bella, what was your stepsister's name?
Dina.
Dina Bas what?
Bas Deborah.
Okay, so I want to just dedicate this one to Dina Bas Devorah. Her neshama should have an aliyah. I find this to be very fitting. The Torah is going to get into great detail about the burial of Yaakov. Nowhere does it give such a description. They embalmed him. They eulogized him, and who came to eulogize him? Who carried his coffin back to Israel? How long they sat Shiva and Shloshim, and they did all these things. The Torah gets into great detail. No, it doesn't spend as many passages in the Torah talking about someone's passing as much as they did about Yaakov. And the Talmud makes an unbelievable statement. The Talmud says, Yaakov Avinu lo meis. Jacob, our forefather, never passed away. The Gemara asks right away, what are you talking about? The opposite, never got such great detail to tell us that he did pass away. And so the Gemara answers, Mazara b'chaim afu b'chaim. As long as his progeny are alive, he has children, he has students. In other words, as long as they live on, he lives on, which very practically means we all have the DNA. We inherited our DNA from our parents, and the DNA, so to speak, lives on. Yeah, the character traits live on. All these different, and students learn from their teachers. They're considered like children. They take the essence of what the teacher truly wants to be, and what they live for and what they stand for, and they continue it. They have it live on, so to speak. But the Zohar says no. Lak Yaakov Avinu lo meis. Jacob never died. Because how do you look at life? What's the perspective over here? Jacob, death means, when you say someone dies, that means you're saying that you're looking at it from the physical world, a physical world perspective. That there was a body here that was alive, and now it's not alive. But we know in the Torah that's not true. That's not the true reality. The true reality is that we're a soul, and the soul is a living entity, and the soul lived from the beginning of, it's part of God, so it always lived. It's eternal, and God put it here for a physical experience for hopefully 120 years, and then it leaves the body and it moves on. It goes back to where it came from. We're not physical beings trying to have spiritual experiences once in a while. That's not who we are. We don't believe in that. That's not Judaism. We're not physical beings trying to have a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to capture in a physical world. That's where we can grasp God's essence through the mitzvahs, through the Torah, and all of that, all the ramifications. So it says the Torah, Yaakov Avinu didn't die. Why? We're teaching you a lesson. There's no such thing as death. It's the soul continues to live on. So then the Zohar says, so what's the sadness? If I know this, that the soul always continues on and lives on. So why do we sit Shiva? Why do we do all these things? Why are we sad? Why is there a certain sadness? So the Zohar says there's a bit of a question whether you should be sad. But if you want an answer, it's because while the soul lives in the body, while our soul lives in our bodies, we can only see things through a physical eyes. And when the soul of another person leaves the body, we don't see the soul anymore. The effect of the soul continues and even greater, says the Zohar. But we don't see it. And because we don't see it anymore, that's the sadness. Which is, I think it's a life-changing idea. And that's from this week's Parsha. Yaakov Avinu comes and gives a bracha to the two children of Yosef, Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh was the oldest one. Manasseh was the oldest. And what happens is Yaakov places his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Manasseh and gives them a blessing. Actually, he goes like this. Puts his hands opposite. And Yosef said, no, you get the right hand always signifies chesed, kindness, and blessing and strength and all great things. So when you want to bless somebody or you want to do things, we always give precedence to the right hand. We put on our coat. When you want to put on your coat, you put your right hand on first, your pants, your right leg, your shoes, your right foot. The right always is given precedence because of that. We always want kindness to be the starting point. We want blessings and kindness to be the foundation. That's why you see the Rebbe. You ever see the Rebbe clap? He claps kind of interesting. He claps like this. He doesn't move his left hand. He's going like this. That kindness should be the one that smacks down. It should be smacked down with kindness. And how we act, God reciprocates. It's a classic concept in Torah. A great line is, when you befriend somebody, God befriends you. That's from the Talmud. So however you act is how God reciprocates. You act like a nice person, God will be nice to you. Obviously, there's exceptions, but it's for the most part. So Yosef wanted the oldest son to get the bigger blessing. That's classic. Yeah, they get the most inheritance. He should get with the right hand. And when you want to place your hand on someone, you place the right hand means I want to give you more. But he flipped it. He switched his hands, and he put his right hand on Ephraim, the younger one, and his left hand on Manasseh, the older one. So Yosef was like, "Whoa, you messed up." He said, "No. Excuse me. The younger one's going to get a bigger blessing. Don't worry, they're going to be equal at some point. But for now, Ephraim needs more of the blessings because he's going to be, who's going to come from him? Joshua, who will be the one. He's the one that takes over Moses and leads us into Israel. He needs more strength. So he needed an added bracha. But don't worry, says Yaakov. They'll match. They'll come back together at some point. They're going to match up. He gives them a blessing. What's the blessing? That they should be like fish. Yidgul arayv b'kerev haaretz. They should multiply like fish. Well, so fish have something. What's unique about fish is their eyes are always open, which means they never have to worry about the evil eye, the ayin hara, this evil eye. Nobody will cast a bad spell upon them. That's like some, you've heard about it. We'll talk about it maybe at a different time. Schneer did do a Talmud class about ayin hara, very, very long time ago. You can check that out on the YouTube page. What does it mean? I think it was talking about mazel and ayin hara. But another explanation of what it means is fish. What's unique about fish is they can't live without. It's not unique about fish, but fish can't live without water. They need water. Water is compared to Torah, and he's giving them a blessing. It's a blessing for them, but it's a blessing for the entire Jewish people. That in order for you to stay grounded, and I give you a blessing that you should be able to live a Torah life. That no matter what trials and tribulations are going to be thrown at you, and they will be thrown at you. daily. I'm just kidding. Or weekly. It could be monthly. You stick to the Torah and you realize your purpose and you try to remind yourself of your purpose, which is not always so easy. And everything will be fine and you'll be wholesome. And I give you that bracha. What else do I want to talk? I'm just moving through the parsha over here. Yaakov says to Yosef, I know you're probably mad at me that I didn't bury your mother in the land of Israel, which kind of is interesting because she is buried in Israel. No, she's buried right outside of Beis Lechem, Bethlehem. And there are different explanations of what that means. I think the Baal HaTurim is the one who says, is it the Baal HaTurim? I don't remember who it is. I forgot who it was. I don't know. The Marsha maybe says that until the land of Israel, until the Jewish people conquered the land of Israel, took over the land of Israel, there was really no, or we entered the land of Israel, there was no holiness in the land of Israel. And so therefore he's telling him, the only place there was holiness was in the Maras Machpelah, the cave of Machpelah, where everyone is buried. Or the patriarchs are buried. There was holiness there, but outside of there was no holiness. So I know you're probably mad at me. I sense that you're mad at me that I didn't bury your mother in the land of Israel. And he's telling him it's because at some point, God has told me through prophecy that at some point we're going to be kicked out and exiled, and we're going to have to pass through part of the path to going into Bavel, or wherever we went. Yeah, Bavel, I think. We're going to pass by Rachel. We're going to pass by her grave, and she's going to come out. And as the prophet says, a sound comes from up high. Rachel is crying for her children, and Hashem responds, there is reward for her merit. That's the line. What's the story? The story is she's going to come out and she's going to ask for mercy upon the Jewish people. That we messed up. Every time we go into exile, it's because we messed up. What we're going to do is we're going to pass by her grave. And Rachel is going to come out. She came out of her grave. She came out, so to speak, spiritually. And she cried to Hashem, what are you doing to my children? Have mercy upon them. And God said, I will have mercy on them because of your sacrifice. What was her sacrifice? She gave the signs of the signs for marriage to Yaakov, to her sister Leah. So Leah wouldn't have to marry Esau. But she took a chance. There was a very good chance that she would have to have been the one to marry Esau. She was willing to make such a sacrifice. I don't want to hurt my sister. I'm willing to put my foot down. I'm willing to take that sacrifice. And God said, there's reward for that sacrifice. Reward is a consequence. She doesn't do it we don't do things for reward or reward or punishment. How do we look at reward and punishment? How powerful the action is. If there's a lot of reward, that means there's a tremendous amount of spiritual energy in that mitzvah, and therefore you should take advantage of it. Okay, there's this consequence that there'll be reward, but the reward is like a barometer. It tells us that there's some great significance to it. Same thing with, if you do this, such terrible things will happen to you. We don't focus on what the terrible things happen to you. It's like a barometer. It's emphasizing, stay away from that. That's not that there's a real spiritual danger to it, spiritual significance or spiritual detriment. So it's something you need to really steer clear of and make boundaries to make sure nobody crosses that way. But because of her great sacrifice, she merited to really help us. And there was an explosion of Torah in the land of Bavel. The great sages, the Talmud is written there. The architects of the oral tradition came from there, and we have the entire oral tradition. Thank God for that. Yaakov gives blessings to all of his children, but we'll just focus on the first four. The first one he gives to Reuven. They're all quite harsh. He rebukes strongly his first the first three children, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Very strong rebukes. The one who takes it to heart is Levi. Levi really feels bad, and he makes a resolution that I will never do such a thing again. And we see in Egypt, what was the tribe? Which tribe was the one that was never enslaved and really protected Torah, learned Torah, and created the Torah giants and really rallied the Jewish people? Was the tribe of Levi. And who comes from the tribe of Levi? Aaron, Moses, Miriam, just to name a few. The tribe of Levi really takes it to heart. When we say a stiff-necked people, we really mean some say it really means the tribe of Levi. Now, stiff-necked, usually something not nice, like stiff-necked, stubborn. And right, because we're stubborn to God. But it also helped us because when somebody else, and especially in the times of Purim, when they said, give up being Jewish and you'll have a good life, we said, no, screw you. We're not doing that. And it really protected our life. Being stiff-necked has its good side to it as well. The tribe of Levi was stiff, was strong. I find like people from the tribe of Levi have a little bit of an edge. I really do. Share a quick interesting idea. It starts off Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Why is it in that order? It's a blueprint. Just to like peel back the Torah a little bit, go into a little bit deeper significance. Reuven refers to service of God, like our initial service to God, come and see God. Reuven means to see, comes from to see, re'eh, to see God. You have to see God in your life, and when you start seeing God in your life, so to speak, you grow to appreciate, and that's how a love builds. There's the idea of Shimon, hearing God. So it makes it even deeper. Seeing has some effect, and then hearing something, you have to work a little bit harder, but it becomes more part of you. And Levi means to walk with God. Levi means to walk with God, to escort God, so to speak. So the relationship becomes, it's like a step, seeing God, then working yourself to really appreciate, God, make it a part of your life. Levi, now I'm able to walk with God. And then there's the idea of Yehuda. Yehuda means submission. It means to be thankful, but it also means submission. Who are you? Submission and like erase, to get rid of. Who's being erased here? You are. You're being erased. And the idea is seemingly something very negative. But I think a great mashal, a great parable that I heard was, let's say you have 3 people listening to music or 2 people listening to music. One guy is like dancing and he's clapping, his eyes are closed, and he's just like, he's smiling, he's looking around. I shouldn't say he's like, he's smiling, he's looking around, he's dancing, having a good time. I'm sure you can relate. Aristeo especially. And then you have the other person that's listening to the song and they're in a different world. They're not moving, they're not smiling. They're taken away to a different world. Yeah, you ever listen to a song and you just like wake up and you're like, I don't even, where am I? Like I was completely in a different place. Because the first person is really having an experience, I think, having an experience. And the second person is the experience. They're so connected with the song and the depth and everything like that, they've lost themselves. They have become the experience. And that's what Yehuda is. That's the ultimate goal. We're trying to lose ourselves. We're trying to lose yourself. Torah is all about losing yourself, being the experience. So if you haven't reached that, you have something to work towards. I think I'll stop there. It gets a little more into the parsha, but I think I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions? Come on. If you don't have any questions, that means you didn't understand. No, I'm joking.
We're having an experience.
Oh. Lilu, very good. Touche.
Trying to connect all what you said right now.
I know. I'm just trying to, and I'm always trying to make it more superficial. I apologize. Very good. Good gesagt, as we say. Good comeback. Good comeback. Very good. Yeah. Okay. So if you have any questions, I'm gonna leave it at that. I think there's awesome ideas in this week's parsha. Parsha's chazak, strength. Yeah. This is a parsha to take care of the next book. This gives strength to the next book, which means the next 7 weeks. There's a lot of energy to take and to unpack and to bring in to the next phase, which is Shmos, which is we're going into Egypt. We're going to go into Egypt to get out of Egypt. Egypt is a part of the in order to go to Geula, in order to have a redemption, you have to have a galus, you have to have an exile, you have to have a moment of just unclear. There's moments of no clarity, of humility, of breakdown. Chassidus says, in order for a seed, I don't know if science is really agrees with this, but this is a classic concept in Chassidus. When a seed is planted in the ground and before it becomes a tree, it completely disintegrates. Meaning you have to break down in order for something greater to happen. That's a classic concept in Chassidus. If you want to throw a baseball really far, you got to take the further back, you got to cock your hand. Yeah, this is like a classic. So we're going into Galus, we're going into an exile. Why? The Rebbe would always say the redemption has to be commensurate, if not even greater, than the exile. The Yerida, the going down, the Aliyah, the elevation has to be commensurate with the however far you fell. Okay, we'll go back to the baseball. The further back you want to throw the baseball, want to throw the baseball really far, further back you got to go. The more humbling, darkness, confusing the time is, it's because you're making way for something even greater. That's what Shmois, that's what we're going to get into. And how to get out of how to redeem ourselves. Don't be stuck. Yeah, stuck. You're going to be stuck. I get stuck all the time. How do we get out of it? That's what this week's parsha is coming. These parshias, that's what it's all about. But you got to prepare. We got to prepare for that, and that's this week's parsha, this Shabbos. We should use it out correctly. We should use it out properly for praying about what it means. Maybe tonight we'll talk a little bit about it at Seder Nigunim. Once again, I want to dedicate this to everybody who needs a refuah and a bracha, but especially Dina Bas Tavora, her neshama should have an aliyah. And we should only have good news. And with that, I'll see you tonight, hopefully. Some of you, at least. Sei gesund. See you, everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.